Welcome all of you to this program. Now I am going to discuss on Government of India Act 1858. The growing resentment in England against the company rule reached its climax with the mutiny of 1857. The mutiny was suppressed, but it sent ripples of fear to London and convinced the British that administration of the India must be taken over by the Crown. The British Prime Minister Palmerston introduced a bill in 1858 in the Parliament for the transfer of Government of India to the Crown. However, before this bill was to be passed, Palmerston was forced to resign on another issue. Later, Lord Stanley introduced another bill which was originally titled as An Act for the Better Government of India, and it was passed on 2nd August 1858. It is called Government of India Act 1858 or 1858 Act. On September 1st, 1858, the Court of Directors of East India Company held its last solemn assembly, and the East India Company issued its last instructions to the servants in the East, offered to its sovereign and empire in these words like, "Let Her Majesty appreciate the gift let her the vast country and teeming millions of India under her direct control, but let her not forget the great cooperation from which she has received them, nor the lessons to be learned from its success." So in this way, the abolition of company rule was done. Government of India Act 1858 provided that India was to be governed directly and in the name of the Crown. This act abolished the company rule, abolished the Court of Directors, and abolished the Board of Control. This act abolished the dual government introduced by the Pitt's India Act. The principle of doctrine of lapse was withdrawn. Liberty was given to Indian rulers, subject to British suzerainty, and it also opened some door for Indians in government services. The act provided the Crown will govern India directly through a Secretary of State for India, who was to exercise the powers which were being enjoyed by the Court of Directors and Board of Control. The office of Secretary of State was vested with complete authority and control over Indian administration. Thus, he was now the political head of the India. He was also a member of the British cabinet and was responsible ultimately to the British Parliament. Lord Stanley was made first Secretary of State for India. He had been earlier the President of the Board of Control. The Government of India Act 1858 provided for Council of India of the Secretary of the State. It was to be consisted of 15 members. 7 of them were to be elected by the Court of Directors, and the rest of 8 members were to be appointed by the Crown. More than half the members must have lived in India for 10 years and must not have left the country more than 10 years before the date of appointment. Each member was to be paid 1,200 pounds and a year out of Indian revenues. Secretary of State of India was empowered to preside at the meetings of the Indian Council. He was to have a vote and also a casting of vote in case of tie. He was also empowered to send and receive secret messages and dispatches from Governor General and was not bound to communicate these to the Indian Council. Because of this Government of India Act 1857, the major changes took place in India. That is, the centralization of the powers was happened. The Government of India Act established the control of British Parliament over Indian affairs. The members of Parliament could ask questions from Secretary of State for India regarding Indian administration. The right of appointment to important offices in India was also vested either in the Crown or in the Secretary of State of India in Council. The administration of the country was now highly centralized. There was a provision of creation of an Indian civil service under the control of the State Secretary of State. The Secretary of State for India was a cabinet minister in the British government, while his agent in India was the Governor General in India. This is the very important things. Thus, Governor General worked as a representative of the British government, much like today's governors work as representatives of the President of India. The Governor General of India was responsible for administration of the country. Along with this, a new office of Viceroy was created to work as a diplomat to parley with the princely states. It was provided that both the offices to be held by same person. The objective of having same person occupy two offices was to avoid any conflict of interest, as it used to be between the Governor General and Chief Justice of Supreme Court of Port of Williams in initial days of East India Company. Viceroy was made responsible to Secretary of State for India. Viceroy was to be a direct representative of the British Crown in India. Lord Canning thus became the first Viceroy of India. Now let us discuss the significance of the Government of India Act 1858. The Government of India Act 1858 was largely confined to the improvement of the administrative machinery by which the Indian government was to be supervised and controlled in England. It did not alter in any substantial way the system of government that prevailed in India. Now see the analysis of the Government of India Act 1858. The Government of India Act 1858 was a formal than substantial change. Crown had already steadily increasing its control over the company's affairs since the beginning of its territorial sovereignty. The main rulers under which India was governed before the passing of the Act of 1858 were already those of the British Parliament. The British administrators, including Governor General, were nominally followed the instructions of the East India Company. In fact, they were strictly following the instructions of the British Cabinet with its Indian minister, who was the President of the Board of Control, and through them to Parliament. The various statutes, charter acts had already substantially reduced the influence of East India Company. This is all about the analysis, discussion of Government of India Act 1858. Thank you.